Thank you for joining us today for our Zips pregame football podcast. I'm Ben Jeanette. Alongside me is Spencer Davies. Spin, what do we got today?
Well, we've got a floor mat opponent is what we have.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan hasn't looked well at all this year. You know, looking at their team, they only averaged 12 points per game, and not to mention they're coming off a embarrassment over Michigan State. And, you know, it is Michigan State. They are one of the better defensive teams, but they haven't been putting up any offensive statistics at all against any opponent.
Yeah, they're pretty bad, to be honest. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
And
Akron's definitely need to take advantage of this because they're favored by 25 points. If they don't win today, that's not good, but I don't see that happening because Akron's looked fantastic.
Well,
especially last week.
They're coming off a huge upset win over a Power 5 opponent in Pitt from the ACC. They went into Pittsburgh last week, pretty much were in control of that game the entire time, and that was because of Connor Hunley, who might be the new Zips ball carrier.
He should be. Juwan Chisholm might get those handoffs today, but I feel like Hunley's going to be their back from now on. I would also like to mention they did hold Pittsburgh to 10 points last week. The Zips are 29th in the NCAA in points against, and they average 19.8 against the Zips defense. So that's fantastic.
You know, the Zips like running the ball with Connor Hunley last week, and they'll probably enjoy some success here. The defense averages of letting opponents run 5.5 yards per carry.
That's pretty terrible.
Oh yeah, and not to mention they can't throw the ball either. You know, their passing is absolutely atrocious as well. They've thrown the ball 104 times, 49 completions, and only have 2 touchdowns.
What I'm looking for today is a big game out of Kyle Pohl, and I feel like Michael Traylor-Bennett's going to have a couple touchdowns as well because he leads the team with 4 right now. And he also has 12 receptions for 216 yards. I think DeRazio gets his first touchdown of the year today as well.
I think Zach DeRazio has a big game. You know, hasn't seen the end zone yet, but he sure has caught a ton of passes for Kyle Pohl.
Yes, he has. He's had 20 receptions for 226 yards. That's 11 yards per catch. So that's a good connection between those two. They've always trusted each other, and I feel like it's going to be the same way today.
You know, when it does come to the passing game, Eastern Michigan allows 257 yards per game. They've given up 9 touchdowns. Average yards per catch, 12.54. Average yards per pass, 8.29. Opponents are 124 throwing the ball, 82, and 2 touchdowns. Total yardage, 1,028 yards through the air.
73 points last week to Michigan State. That's just terrible. And Kyle Pohl, we've seen what he can do before. He's had his mistakes. He's been more mobile as of late, but I feel like he's going to re-cement what he does, and he's going to tear this secondary and this defense apart.
You know what? This is week 5?
Yes.
Week 5. Eastern Michigan only has 866 yards of total offense. They can't move the ball.
So that's literally less than 200 yards per game?
Yeah. You know, and they've given up 1,997 yards, basically 2,000 yards of offense to teams in 5 games.
It should be a massacre today. I'm not going to even put it lightly. They need to they're favored by 25, like I said earlier.
Eastern Michigan's offense averages 216 yards per game. Opponents are averaging nearly 500 yards at 499.
Their downfall came when they had that entrance that made the not top 10.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was bad. But like I was saying about Kyle Pohl, he hasn't had the greatest year so far. 79 of 148 for 860 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's decent, but it's not Kyle Pohl like we've seen in the past.
And not to mention, you know this team is bad. This team is bad, not just at offense, not just at defense, at special teams. You want to know what they average in terms of their punt return average? 2.43 yards per punt.
That's not good for them, at least. Zach Paul recently informed me that the Zips are very high in rankings for the amount of return yards against them. They don't return a lot of yards against the Zips. 7 yards for returners. And last week you saw
the Zips coverage is very good. Their punt return coverage is very good, and their kick return coverage. The Zips play solid special teams.
All-American last week, Tyler Boyd got shut down by that Zips coverage team.
And you know what? What I loved about the Zips team is, you saw last week they go in to beat Pitt, and that's coming off an embarrassing loss against Marshall. So they're able to shake off losses and win games. And I'm going to love to see what they do with a win, seeing if they could build on that momentum. Now, one of the things you want to worry about is that hangover with the Zips. You did beat Pittsburgh. Don't overlook an opponent. That's what Pittsburgh did last week when they played the Zips. I don't want to see the Zips come out here and overlook Eastern Michigan.
I don't see them coming out flat. I see them coming off of they've got their own high going right now. They beat Pittsburgh last week at Pittsburgh. They've got to be confident. Like I said, it's got to be a massacre today.
Yes, and again, I hope so. With a game like this, a team that no one's expecting to do anything, you've seen what they've done. Their only win is against Morgan State. They're coming off an embarrassing loss against Michigan State at East Lansing. You don't want to give this team life from the beginning.
No, not at all. And that Morgan State win was by 3 points at home. That was very similar to what the Zips were like a couple years ago when they lost to Gardner-Webb. That's what the kind of team that Eastern Michigan's putting out on the field. I don't see the Eagles making any noise at all.
No, I don't either. And, you look at their last 3 games, they've only scored 17 points in their last 3 games when they scored 31 against Morgan State. So that's atrocious. Again, this team does nothing well on offense, doesn't do a lot well on defense, can't stop anybody. And you know what? Their special teams is absolutely atrocious too, because their kick return average, it's 19.25 to opponents. Yes, they do return the ball 20.92, so their kick coverage is much better than what their punt is, but they're also giving up 22.2 in terms of punt return yardage. They're giving up 20 yards per punt.
You can't win that way.
No, not at all.
You know what I look today as? I see Juwan Chisholm getting a lot of carries today just because he's going to need that game to re-engage himself into the season. Kyle Pohl's second on the team in rushing right now.
I see. You know what? I disagree with you. I think Connor Hunley took the reins of this team last week. You reward a guy who goes out there and does that.
Oh, I completely agree.
You don't take away his carries. You know what? I'm not the guy that says if you get hurt, you can't lose your job. Because what I saw Connor Hunley do last week, he is the new starting running back for the Zips.
Took the bull by the horns.
Yeah. He saw an opportunity against the biggest opponent that they've played so far and won that game. They rode him to victory.
19 rushes for 148 yards.
That's
easy as that.
Phenomenal.
You know what I'd like to see today, too? His complimentary back last week.
Cody Grice getting the end zone some more?
Getting the end zone, yes.
I would love to see that more, too.
It worked twice last week against a Power 5 conference opponent. Why couldn't it work against any other opponent?
All right, Spencer, who do you have winning this game?
I've got the Zips winning, let's say, 45-3.
You know what? I'm right there with you. I got the Zips winning 33-3.
Yep, I see them getting a field goal at some
point. I would not be surprised if Eastern Michigan does get shut out in this game. Again, they have not stopped anybody. They can't put up points. Their one win is against lowly Morgan State by only 3 points. They've only scored 17 points in their last 3 games. And again, I think the Zips are going to ride Connor Hunley down the throats of Eastern Michigan. For Spencer Spin Davies, I'm Ben Jeanette. We will be back here with you for some post-game. The Zips, Eastern Michigan, here at the University of Akron, homecoming day.